I People sometimes ask the question, how do I know when a poem is done? And my answer is always when I've exhausted the possibilities. Whether it be the possibilities of the music, of the material, of the form, of the length, but you want to go for everything you can possibly do with the poem. Here it is, water, music. There's a little slash in between the two, and of course, Michael Zelahosky's artwork. The reason for the slash between the two words is that I think the book is trying to ride the border between nature and culture. And when you're in culture, you're immediately into history and politics and all of the distress that comes with those. And nature, on the other hand, and particularly here in Western Massachusetts, very beautiful place, is a place of solitude and solace and sustenance. And I'm trying to sort of tread the line between those two realms to show how we live in the world, meaning the natural world, and how we live in the world, meaning the human world and all of its strife and difficulty. I think a title is your one and only, uh, if you will, op-ed opportunity with the reader. It's the place where you can say, "I'm look at this." I'm pointing in a certain way, and you don't want it to be too obvious. I love titles to be a little ironic, to sort of be inviting. What's that poem going to be about? There's a poem here called "To the Coming Disaster," and it's like, okay. And it's not a long poem, and that plays off of kind of, to autumn or something, or ode to some, right? I mean, that's an old trope of romantic poetry. And yet you're talking about the coming disaster. What could that possibly be? And it's a rather short poem, so how much are you going to be able to say about the coming disaster? um, I think titles are really important to poems. I try to get my students to work on them, rather than just the title being a line from a poem, or a phrase from a poem. So, sometimes that often happens, but I think it's where you can be at your most playful in a serious or devilish or even witty fashion. I tend to write a line and then write a second line. But if there's something I want to change, then I will start again, write the first line, change the second line, write the third line. But if there's something I want to change, write the first line, write in hand. I mean, it's crazy. It's nuts. But I love to write by hand. I love the physicality of that feeling. And my poems are very musical, and they're pretty tight in their metricality. So that takes a lot of adjustments as the poem is going. I tend to write a first draft pretty quickly, but then revise and revise and revise. I always have a stack of poems that are going, usually anywhere from 30 to 50 poems that are kind of in a little stack, and depends on the day. You pick a poem up, and you say, oh, I can do. Oh, now I see what I need to do here, and you sort of tinker away at it in those ways. That's that editorial edge that you can have, that you can rhyme two words that you don't expect to see rhymed, and that can put an edge in a poem. And again, it introduces a certain kind of musicality and a certain kind of resonance, without rhyming light and night, right? I mean, obvious rhymes. Just a stanza of storms of harbors, the wind chopped bay, laced with white caps like macrame, and to thread together, if you will, The notion of white caps on the water looking like macrame, and then getting to rhyme it besides, I think just puts a little more energy into the poem. It's again another tool, and in order to transform one thing into another, right? One energy into another energy. That is actually the definition of work. The physics definition of work is to transfer one source of energy into another source of energy. And I think that's what rhyme is a machine that can do that work for you in interesting ways. I knew Merrill actually, and I only met him a few times, but I had him come read at my college. I was a great fan of his work, and he was a very nice man. And so it felt, very sustaining to be in that space. Yeah, I would say it was particularly comforting, and I guess to have known him. And I know there are some writers who are intimidated and don't write, have not written at his desk, and have written in the little alcove instead, the little dining room table, if you will. I had no problem. I was very happy sitting at that desk, and felt it gave me a kind of blessing or permission to make the most of it that I could. I'll read a poem which unfortunately is as prevalent today as it was in 2012, which was after it was in the fall, late fall, after really early winter of 2012, after I was at the Merrill House in the spring of 2012. And it's a poem called Nobody's Road, which addresses the mass shootings and it was written on the occasion of Sandy Hook. Uh, and I was actually in a grocery store in Peterborough, New Hampshire, about to enter the McDowell colony for a residency, picking up a few supplies, when the cashier said to the woman in front of me, "What a terrible thing, such a small town like that." And I knew immediately what they were talking about. I knew it was I didn't know it was Sandy Hook, but I knew it was some kind of mass shooting. And of course, why do I know that? Why did I know that? Because we see this happen over and over and over again. We know the narratives, and the media narrative, the lobbying narrative, the political narrative, and so this was simply to try to render that kind of madness in itself. There's also a road down the road from me called the Nobody's Road. So you're asking about titles earlier, and sometimes you find a title and you just tuck it away until a good time to use it. And this seemed particularly a good time for it. Nobody's Road. Nobody knows what troubled the kid. Nobody even knew where he lived. Nobody remembers hearing a thing. Nobody considered inquiring. Nobody thought to call the police. Nobody worried it would come to this. Nobody can say how he got inside. Nobody knows yet how many died. Nobody can think of just what to do. Nobody can help but feel deja vu. Nobody agrees how to prevent it. Nobody wants their rights suspended. Nobody can fathom the depth of such grief. Nobody is sure just what to believe. Nobody can undo what has been done. Nobody is watching the neighbor's son. I'll add a little bit on that. We were talking about form earlier. When I first wrote the poem, it had 20 lines because of the 20 children who died at Sandy Hook. And that was my way to formally pay homage to those lives lost. And for years, it had 20 lines. And I was damned I was going to have that poem to be 20 lines long. And just before, in the last throes of the book coming together, I looked hard at the poem, and there were just two lines that didn't work. And of course, what I finally realized is, what was I thinking that I could pay, I that a poem could really pay homage to those 20 children, and so the poem's 18 lines. Now it comes up short, as it should, as it can't help but come up short, and that's okay. That's important to know. This is a different kind of poem, written in Stonington. Obad, which is a morning song, it's a song of the morning. The seagull, kiting in a cage of wind, navigates again its scry of need. Beyond the docks, the wooden boats, rough barbs, buoying flight toward an end to flight, and gravity riding the wind.